Okay, my name's Larry Barber. I've been hanging around here for quite a while. I was on sort of staff at Gutenberg College for a while, and then I was, what else? On the staff in McKinsey Study Center. I used to do a lot of more teaching around. More recently, I've been more involved. I am employed by a nonprofit organization called Charis Foundation, which is a nonprofit that primarily works with pastors. And so I see a lot of pastors, or they'll come for like 2 weeks at a time. I'll see them for 3 hours a day, because a lot of pastors get burned out or get in trouble with some. So that's what the mission of Charis is, and I'm a pastoral counselor for Charis. And then I have a community-based practice that just kind of pays the bills along with my wife. So that's kind of what I do. I've been presenting this model for a long time. This is a model that I've been working on for probably 30 years, and it's kind of a work in progress. I learn stuff every time I teach it, I present it. I'm going to learn stuff tonight from you guys. I'm going to do this series a bit different than what I've done before. I mean, how many of you heard me do this before? It's going to be a little different. So normally what I've done is focused on sort of the dynamics of relationships and how people were in conflict. I focused on the dynamic of that conflict in between two people, for example. I'm not going to do that this time. I'm really going to focus on sort of the decisions that we make, so that I'm going to try to help you identify what those decisions are and what actually happens when we make those decisions. And the reason I want to do that is because we have a hard time connecting the dots between the decisions that we make and what actually happens. And we're going to talk about why is that? Why is it that we have such a hard time learning? And there's a number of reasons. But I also want to change kind of the way that I'm doing this a bit. I'm hoping to involve you more in it. I'm going to try by interacting with you, listening to each other, having you interact with each other more. But also for my part, I want to trust that you're going to learn through the process rather than listening to me tell you what I think. So that's a new thing for me in this way. Again, the focal point of this series is to help you see and understand the significance of the choices we make and the importance of learning from them, and then what gets in the way. I think that being willing to learn and wanting to learn from the choices that I make is foundational to kind of a good, healthy relationship, but it's also the necessary criteria for actually doing repair. And repair is really important because you're going to have conflict. We're all broken people, and we show up. And forgiveness is really good because we're going to hurt each other, and forgiveness is important. But also understanding myself and what I brought to it so that I can actually talk about that and take responsibility for myself is very crucial to doing repair. It's when we hurt each other over time, what happens is our trust is diminished. It's hurt. And if the lack of trust makes a huge difference in how open or vulnerable I'm going to be. And if I'm in a relationship where I'm really self-protected and not open, that's going to have a huge impact on the dynamic of the relationship both ways. But if I can look at myself, learn about my decisions and how I interact, particularly when there's conflict, because when there's conflict, I'm going to show up in ways that I don't normally show up. And there's a lot to learn from. So I think learning about myself and what I bring is crucial to, again, being healthy, but also doing repair. And not many people know how to do repair. So that's really important. That's kind of where I'm going. I want to do, so I've entitled the series Learning from Conflict. And I hope to accomplish several objectives. And let me just list what they are. I want to present some reasons why we have such negative and unpleasant consequences of conflict and associations with it. I want to shed some light on what makes it so difficult for us to learn. and why we keep making the same choices over and over and over again, thinking we're going to have different results. I want to give some clear examples of consequences to our choices with the hope that, again, we can connect the dots between the choices and what happens. That's really important because we don't do a very good job of that. In a word, I want to kind of provide a context where we can learn about ourselves and about the choices we make. And that's it. So a number of years ago, I did a presentation. I actually was one of a co-presenter. There was another person who was presenting, and we were talking about conflict. So I had my perspective that I presented on conflict, and he presented his perspective on conflict. And my perspective on conflict is, we're going to talk about this in a second. My perspective on conflict is that conflict is focused primarily on how people interact with each other. It kind of happens in the interaction. It doesn't have to do with the subject of what we're talking about. My co-presenter's focus was, and belief was, that conflict happened with the subjects that people talk about. There are certain subjects that people find more difficult. And he listed 5 subjects that he thought was the source, the problem with why people had conflict. He listed time, money, sex, who's responsible and who's not, and children as the source of the reason why most people have conflict. That was his perspective. So which of these perspectives is the accurate way to understand conflict? And that's part of what we're going to try to unpack. So what I want you to do to start out with is I want you to just very quietly break into like groups of 4, if possible. If it's one more or whatever, that's fine. And what I would like you to do is I want you to each group come up with 5 qualities that you hope for in your relationships, particularly your more important relationships. 5. Okay, so go ahead and do that. How are we doing over here? About ready? Okay. Why don't you turn around? Kirk, why don't you list off what your group came up with?
Oh boy, I was thinking so much. I wasn't writing right.
Well, maybe you can pass it on to Joe.
We got trust.
Trust.
Yeah, we said it first.
You got, okay. We'll put a mark next to it.
Honesty.
Honesty.
Listening skills.
Listen.
Yeah, listen. Fun.
Fun.
Ooh, yeah. Encouragement.
Encouragement. Okay. Okay.
The bar's been set.
Say that again. The bar's been set? Absolutely. You guys are in trouble. Who's okay, good. Emily? Trust. We got 2 trusts, 3 trusts. Emotionally engaged. Okay. Vulnerability. I don't know, Kurt. They're You're talking to a counselor. You're talking to
I shared Joe's gonna defend that.
respect. That's a good one. Empathy. Okay. Those are great. How about you guys? Who's trust? We got you here. Intimacy.
We had hearing, not listening.
Hearing. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Taking it up. Vulnerability. Got another vulnerability. Okay. Well, we're okay. Honesty and truth. Truthfulness. Okay. I'm going to put truthfulness here. Let's say personal responsibility. Okay. Those are good ones. I don't know, Kurt. I think they took the challenge, man. Okay, this. How about this group?
We have honesty.
Oh, we got another honesty here. This is important. Empathy.
Trust.
Ooh, trust is winning out.
Capacity.
Compassion. Capacity. Talk more about that.
Capacity. Well, I guess we talked about wisdom, the ability to have a wide aperture, the ability to have good capacity for interaction.
So when I think about capacity, I think about the ability to hold stuff.
That could be that too.
Yeah. So that or openness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think capacity is an ability to not be reactionary
Okay.
to action.
Okay. Okay.
Self Yeah, and we also have someone who's able to be present.
Present. Okay, we got emotionally engaged. We'll say present. And I'm just going to write capacity. Okay. What do you think about this list? It's a good list. There's only one word missing. Love. Yeah. You guys don't want that, do you? Okay. Good list. This is what we all want. I want to show you something. This is the list. Don't look at this side. Just look at this side. Forgiveness, communication, trust, respect, intimacy, vulnerability, courage, honesty, candor, companionship, connection. So every time I've asked this question here, these are the common answers with people and what they want for relationships. Pretty amazing. We all want the same stuff. Okay. So now you're going to break into a group again, same groups, and you're going to answer the question of what the experience with conflict. So what happens in the relationship when you have conflict? And so you come up with 5 things. Again, each group. Go ahead.
Could you rephrase that, Larry?
Can I rephrase it? What is the experience that you have? Like, if you have conflict, what is your experience?
If I'm in conflict with So what am I?
Well, like if you have a conflict with Nancy, what happens? What's your experience? Five words. Let's put them on the board here. So I'm going to start with the group in the back again. Are you the writer? You're the scribe? Cool. Shut down. Fear. So let's say with shutdown, we get isolation. Okay. Like reactionary, sort of the opposite of what she was talking about, capacity. So there's no capacity, there's kind of overreacting. Is that what you're getting at? Okay. Overreacting. Okay. Anger. Okay. Fracturing, separation, division, that kind of stuff. Okay. I would just call fracturing, but fracture, separation. Okay. How about this group in the back?
Betrayal.
Betrayal. You're going for the big words. Defensiveness. Yes.
One for anger.
Another one, anger.
Bitterness and grief.
Bitterness. Ooh. Grief.
Overstatement.
I think a good way of understanding grief too is loss. Okay. And what was the last one?
We had overstatement, which is kind of
Like an exaggeration kind of thing? Okay. Overreactive. Let's say exaggeration. Oh, unreasonable. Okay. Okay. Good. How about this group? Oh, I'm sorry. This group here.
Okay, so we came up with feeling unknown, and that kind of goes with being
Okay.
powerless.
Unknown.
I think those are just
Powerless.
distant,
Distant. I'm going to go isolation here. Distant. Okay.
confused,
Confused.
unsettled,
Unsettled. That's a good one.
and vulnerable.
Not in the sense of the other list.
I know we
Not vulnerability, but vulnerable.
right.
Yeah.
Indignation,
Ooh.
disengaged,
You guys came up with a bunch of them.
and either trust breaking or rattling a fragile trust.
Okay. Fragile. Let's hit fragile trust. Okay. Hope you guys can read my writing. I'm horrible. Okay. Here you go. It's your turn. It's your chance.
We had defensive.
Defensive. That's a good one.
And pain.
Hurt, pain.
Yeah.
Pain's good. That's what it's all about, isn't it?
We had stress or anxiety.
Anxiety. Ah. Stress. Yes.
Blame.
Blame. Probably didn't know it, but we're going to talk a lot about blame.
Selfishness.
Yes. Okay.
Passiveness.
Passive.
Like, like independent.
Kind of like withdrawn.
Yeah.
Okay. We're running out of room here. You guys are good.
And then like feeling justified or excuse.
Self-justification. Yeah. Okay. Flooded. Yes. How many of you know what Joe's talking about when he says flooded?
Overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed, but it's more than that. It's like your brain won't shut off. Keep it going. Okay? I'm sorry?
You can go hyper, hypo.
That's
You
true.
can flood hypo.
You can flood hypo too. That's correct. You understand what Andrew's saying? You can go, or you can just completely freeze. Right. Okay. Great list. So, what do we hope for? Trust, honesty, listen, hearing, fun, encouragement, engaged, vulnerability, respect, empathy, intimacy, hearing, self-reflection, personal responsibility, being present, capacity, love. How do we get from there, all that positive good stuff, to here?
Pretty easily.
What happened? There's an honest man. Yes, but what is the dynamic? What is it that happens that we go from these really good things that we want, good and right things that we want, to having this experience here? What happens? I'm sorry?
Self enters the picture.
Self enters the picture? Like, I mean,
My expectations.
like me, like ourselves, that kind of thing? Expectations, all that stuff? Yes. Yeah. Anybody else?
Differences of opinion and not knowing how to bridge the gap.
Differences of opinion. Okay.
It seems like,
Go ahead.
it just seems like we're willing to really drop what we want to have from other people. We aren't willing to, willing to drop that really quickly if we have to embody it ourselves. So if you want love and empathy, et cetera, you have the choice to give that. But
Yes.
in this conflict, it seems like it's just reflexive to just go to
So what do you think the conflict is?
what the conflict.
Yeah, like you're saying that we want love and empathy kind of thing. And if we want that, we should be giving it. But what is the conflict between actually giving it? What's the conflict? Oh, I'm sorry.
So it's quick.
Okay. Anybody else? Tricia?
Misunderstanding.
Misunderstanding? Sure. Okay. Debbie?
I think we can fail to take personal responsibility for our own feelings in conflict, and we can take too much responsibility for other people's feelings in the conflict.
Okay. Any other ideas? Those are all good.
Just whatever impression they give you of, like, they could be saying something very simple, but if they say it in anger, you automatically respond.
So you're talking more about how people interact with each
Yeah.
other than what the subject matter.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're on that side of the camp, and
I've experienced both.
okay. Okay. So at this point, what I'd like to do is talk about, sort of identify where the conflict is. And this is what I presented when I was the presenter with that other person saying that was the 5 subjects. This is what I presented. Can you guys see okay? So whenever people interact with each other, there's always, always, always 2 levels going on simultaneously. There's what people who study communication call it content and meta communication. I simply call it the what and the how because it's simple. It's easier to remember. So the what do you think the what is? I'm sorry? Oh, I don't want to mark on that one, do I? Thank you very much. Good. Good eye. So what do you think the what is? The subjects that people talk about. I'm going to just list them over here. Subjects. What else? What are some other words for subjects? Content. Yes.
What you believe about the other person.
I'm sorry.
Would it be what you believe about the other person?
So it'd be like information or belief. Belief. Okay. Anybody else?
We heard difference of opinions, so the opinions.
So an opinion. Okay. It could be anything. So information, words, language, that kind of stuff. That's the what. We have language as a convention so that we can understand each other. We agree that that chair is a chair, it's not a shoe. So language helps us understand each other. And we agree that this word means this and another word means something different. The what are, you're all right, language, words, information, opinion, subjects, content, belief. That's what the what is. Okay? So what's the how? It's the manner. Yes. But what's included in all that? In the manner.
Creates conflict and a gentle answer because it's the opposite. So,
Tone,
yeah.
inflection,
Body language.
body language, posture,
The medium we do it.
what's
so
that?
The medium we do it. So like an like email or something like that.
Oh, the medium?
method. Yeah, the medium that we communicate.
I'm really more talking about when people actually, when you and I are having a
When we're doing
conversation.
it face to
kind of
face,
thing.
okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
Facial expression,
Facial expressions. Yes. Big one.
eye contact.
Exactly. How many of you have had an experience where the person you're interacting with will not make eye contact with you? That's a very different experience when someone makes eye contact with you. How do you interpret that? That they don't think you're important? Yes. It communicates, it speaks pretty loudly. Any other observations? Volume. It's a very different experience if I speak softly and if I speak really loudly or angrily.
I was just thinking, Larry, with eye contact, there are some cultural differences to
Absolutely.
consider.
Absolutely.
They could mitigate or
Absolutely.
make worse
Yes.
what
Yes.
the meaning is.
Yeah. Yes. Definitely.
Vocal tones that aren't words.
Well, give me an example. Yes. Sure. Yes. Silence. Yes.
Too slow.
Yeah. How's this? How's that? That kind of stuff.
Sarcasm.
Yes. Yes. That's kind of like tone and all that stuff, but we're going to get there. We'll get there. It's going to come out. Another thing that I think is important to understand is what is said when it shouldn't be said, and what's not said when it should be said. Timing, absolutely. Yeah. Have you ever heard somebody say something when it just didn't seem like it was not just the right time, but it didn't fit? Or when somebody didn't say something when it would have been appropriate to say something. That's the how-to. All right. Okay. So you guys did a good job. Okay. So the combination of the what here, the language and all that, and the how is what we call process. Process is everything that happens when people interact with each other. Okay. So some of you may know this, so give some other people some chances here. So if we're to look at the combination of the what and the how as process, what percentage of the process is the what, and what percentage of the process is the how? What do you guess? Is more significant? Way more. Want to take a guess? Who said that? Who said that? 90? Did you cheat? The how is 7 to 10%. I'm sorry. The how is 90 to 93% of what happens, and the how is 7 to 10%. I want you to think about that for a second. What does that mean for our relationships? What's the significance of that? I'm sorry?
So how we communicate is more important than what we're communicating.
Certainly takes up more space, doesn't it? That's not to say this isn't important, because we need language to understand each other. Yes, Emily.
When you say it's a percentage.
Yes.
When you say that one of those is 7% or 90%, is
Yeah.
that percentage of how important it is? What's that a percentage
No,
of?
that's a percentage of what's actually happening when people are interacting with each other.
Oh, okay.
Like when I'm talking to you right now, 90 to 93% of what's happening and the way that I'm interacting with you is happening on a how level rather than a what level. The words that I'm using are the 7 to 10%. The language, the subject that I'm talking about is the 7 to 10%.
Okay. Is that almost the same as saying that what I am absorbing from this interaction with you is mostly your physical and visual and auditorial input?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, that's a good insight. Absolutely. That you are responding more to how I say what I say than what I'm actually saying. Now, we're actually talking about some pretty important stuff, a pretty important subject of relationships and how we interact, and that's important. But if I was standing up here and Andy and I were just talking about you want to talk about it real quick? Well, Andrew and I go up to have the last 4 years, 3-4 years, we've gone up to Victoria, Canada. There's a ministry up there called SALTS, Sailing and Life Training Society, and they build wooden ships, schooners, and they take high school kids and college kids and they teach them how to sail. They go for a week or 10 days or a month, and they sail. And Andrew and I have had the opportunity to go up and do a workshop or a retreat up there for them the last 3 or 4 years. And this year we aren't going, it's a big deal to go up there because it's 2 days driving, customs, the border, all that stuff. It's 2 long days. Of course, we did stop in Seattle and have a delicious dinner and oysters. Yes. But they wanted to do something different. And If you notice the language that I'm using to describe, I'm not reading the Bible, but I'm talking about what's true. And I would suggest to you that there's a it's almost like if we talk about the Bible or we read the Bible, there's a way in which that's perceived as, well, I don't know, sacred in a different way than just understanding what Jesus was saying to the people that he was talking to, that was recorded. Does that get it? You want to say
Like mysterious?
just what's that?
Like mysterious? Like there's a mystery to it?
Not so much a mystery, but it's different if because it's recorded in the Bible. If Jesus were standing here right now and he were talking to us, people would think it was just Jesus talking to us because he was having a conversation with us and helping us understand. But since it's in the Bible and it's read, it's different. There's a difference to it.
Gotcha.
In a way that, so if I go up to Victoria and I'm talking about the reality and the truth of relationships and what's real, that's perceived different as somebody have a pastor come in and do some teaching in the Bible per se. It's seen as different. And I'm not saying the Bible's not a big deal. It's a really big deal. And it's the inerrant word of God. That's not what I'm saying. That makes sense. Yes, Joe?
Well, I'm curious because what I hear you saying is that it's what I think of, like, or what you're saying is like what I think of the Bible then has an impact upon what the Bible actually says to me. Because if you think of it just like,
I think in some people's minds, yes. Yeah,
which is what I think you're trying to communicate,
yes,
right?
Yeah,
so,
that it's different.
So how does that played out in your model? Is there room for it?
Well, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think what we have, for example, particularly in the Gospels, is we get to sit in on Jesus actually interacting with people, and there's a whole ton of how going on.
Sure.
A lot. But I don't think I think with Jesus, and I think probably Jesus knew that this stuff was going to get written down. But I don't think it affected what he said or how he said it.
Sure.
I think he was being present. I think he was being real. I think he was speaking truth into people's lives. And I mean, certainly he's different than we are, any of us. But I think speaking truth into people's lives and being real and talking about reality is just the same. That's my point. And it's not viewed that way. So, you want to add anything to that?
Sorry. It's okay. You can keep going. I'm struck by like the comment that people made about Jesus was that he spoke as one with authority.
Yes.
And not as of the Pharisees.
Yes.
And that's what you're saying. Meaning,
yes,
Jesus was countercultural to the prevailing culture of the Pharisees.
Yes.
And so how he communicated was a departure from what people were used to.
Right.
And that includes the way he thought, the way he interpreted the scriptures. But I suspect also the way he, just the way he related with people,
yes,
was a complete departure from.
Right.
And so I think what you're touching on is that the way you and I communicated, in a sense, was a departure from the culture that
Correct.
People are used to.
Yes.
And as such was treated to some degree with suspect.
Yes, a little bit.
A suspicion.
Yes. Yeah.
A little bit. Not.
I think in a way that if I just started with the Bible and teaching the Bible, that wouldn't have been there to the degree. I think over time there was trust built.
Yes.
But I think you're right. Yeah.
Because it appeals to a cultural expectation within contemporary Christianity that that's what you do.
Yes.
And that makes you a safe person to me.
Yes.
By doing that.
Yes.
So.
Exactly. Good. So again, we're thinking about what it means that 90 to 93% of what happens between people when they interact is the how. Any more thoughts about that? That was a really good point, Emily.
I believe you're immersed. And I find it frustrating because I can't control the level.
You can't control the how?
Well, you can, but I find it much more difficult to control that aspect of the interaction.
Yes, exactly.
From my perspective.
Yes, exactly.
Even though it's so important.
Which is why thinking about conflict as the subject is so appealing. Because if it's just the subject, then and we can nail down those 5, and we're good. You know, is there anybody in here that's nailed down those 5?
That's a great point. Those are
No, it's okay.
from coast to coast. Those are involuntary, to your point.
Yes,
Like we just do those without
that's right.
even thinking about it. And
Yes.
what's the research like? For every bit of processing that our conscious mind does, it's like 6 times subconscious. So we think of ourselves as very conscious, controlled people,
Yeah.
and it couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah, there's a book. Was it Michael Crawford?
It was a different one.
Oh, it's a different one.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But there's research that suggests that only 19% of what we know, what's going on consciously, that we're aware of consciously, when we interact with people, particularly when there's conflict, 81% is subconscious or implicit, what we're responding to. We don't even know it, what we're responding to. It's pretty crazy.
On this how side, I know for me, I've got a very particular one that I work on really hard.
Yes.
Is, you said eye contact, is making eye contact with people.
Yes.
When I'm far away from people, I can make eye contact with them. But if I get to when you're having a conversation with someone up close,
Yes.
I can't see their face unless I put on my glasses. And if I don't have my glasses on, I have a hard time making eye contact with them, and I have to work on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
yes.
It's involuntary, but you can exercise it.
Yeah.
I don't do it all the time.
Yeah.
Well, but
okay.
Yeah, because I've noticed how uncomfortable it makes people when I'm like looking at their shoulder or looking past them or.
Okay. So any questions about this? I think what's significant about this also is that this is the relationship. What we talk about it's important, but this is really where the relationship happens, is on the how.
I'm thinking, I agree with you, and I don't want to retract what I said about the how being super important, but I'm also thinking that something about the language refines or clarifies, or there's an important role.
Absolutely.
When coupled with the how.
Absolutely.
And maybe you'd like to
well,
comment on that.
I think the how significantly impacts the language, and it can change everything. It can change the meaning.
Well, by the same token, it almost seems like the language can do that to put a finer point on the how.
But it also, how I use language is the how, you know. Help me out. I think you're trying to get at something. Maybe I'm not.
Well, you know, I don't know that I have a fully developed notion here, but it just seems like if the language component didn't exist at all, then my how may be misperceived.
Oh, sure.
To some large extent.
Sure. Well, the language is very helpful in terms of understanding each other. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
That's why we agree that language is important and why certain words mean certain things, not other things.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You have your hand up there, Joe?
Sure. I guess just when I think about communication and speech, right? So you have your pathos, your ethos, and your logos in that way, as far as from what I understand from a classical standpoint. And so I see in this your essentially your pathos, your how, right? And then your logos is your what. But I don't see the ethos, like what L actually thinks of C impacts the process.
Yeah, I'm not focusing so much on the ethos so much. I'm not concerned about the dynamic right now.
Okay.
I'm going in a different direction. I want to focus not on the dynamic, but on the choices that we make. And that's where we're going right now.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. So, but that's a great question, Joe. I mean, because that is our how we interact with each other significantly affects the dynamic of a relationship. It is. Okay. So I'm going to write a couple things out, and then I'm going to give you guys another chance to interact. Intimidation, being big, being complicit, being withdrawn or indifferent, being a manager, caretaker, being resistant, and we can be passive or aggressive, and then being dependent. Okay, these are different strategies that people use in conflict. The reason that we use these strategies, well, let me ask you, why do you think people use particular strategies when they have conflict? Self-protecting, said that? From what?
Self-protection from whatever, however the other person might make you feel, or from all those things we wrote down.
Okay, so discomfort.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So we develop strategies, all of us have developed strategies over time that we believe will keep us from experiencing pain or discomfort or suffering, because we don't want to feel that. We've had life experiences as children or growing up or as adults, and we sometimes consciously, sometimes often implicitly make decisions about how we are going to be in the world to prevent experiencing that kind of pain again. Okay? So what I want you to do is to break into your groups again. There are 4 groups. 6. Okay. How about this group? List 10 ways in which you have been big or intimidating, or someone's been big or intimidating with you. 10 ways. Okay? This group here, I want you to list 10 ways you or someone else has been complicit with you.
Can you define that?
Complicit?
Yeah.
That's a good thing. Complicit would be, I'm going to just go along with the program. I'm going to agree. I'm not going to tell you what I think or feel or want, out of trying to avoid the discomfort of conflict. Okay. How about if you guys do the same one, same this one too? I'm going to give you a double thing. Withdrawn or indifferent. What have you experienced yourself withdrawing or being indifferent? Withdrawing would be any way people move away from conflict or disengage from a relationship, move away. Maybe it would be helpful if I talked about these, just gave an overview before you actually gave some definitions. So intimidation, what makes it a self-protection or what makes it a strategy for conflict is that if I somehow, by being big or intimidating, I can get you to do what I want you to do, I won't have to experience what I don't want to experience emotionally. It's based on fear. So I'm using bigness to manage my fear. That's how I'm responding to the conflict. Okay? So let's say we have a disagreement. Let's say Andrew and I have a disagreement, and I'm going to just tell him that he's wrong or be sarcastic as a way of being big, so he'll just agree with me. Shut up and agree with me. That would be an example of that. Okay? Complicit would be just agreeing with everybody. Never disagree, never say what you think, never ask for anything, that kind of thing, as a way of avoiding the discomfort of having somebody be upset with you or angry with you. Withdrawn and indifference is it's kind of on a continuum about how safe a person believes the world is, and it has to do with how engaged or disengaged I am. Indifference is telling myself a story that it doesn't matter. There's lots of different ways, again, in withdrawing. So let's say being a manager, caretaker, basically a manager is, this is an issue of responsibility, and I'm taking on responsibility for someone else that isn't my responsibility. And the caretaker is the same thing. What makes that a strategy for conflict, responding to conflict? What do you think?
Well, if you're the caretaker, then it's your fault. And so you won't get into a conflict with them because you can just take it all on yourself. Is that what that would be? Is just you take it all onto yourself, and so you don't blame them at all for it.
Well, what if I'm a manager and a caretaker and you don't do what I say? Because managers and caretakers want to give a lot of advice. See, the conflict would be if I was interacting with you and you had a conflict and I was trying to help you think about what your options were or what you wanted for yourself and let you do that for yourself. In contrast to that, what if I was a manager or a caretaker and I was telling you what you should think, what you should feel, what you should want, and what you should do? So that would be the difference. So what would that make that a strategy for conflict? Any ideas?
Isn't it sort of like this whole mess happened because you didn't listen to me?
Sure. If you just do what I say, yes. So I get to put the blame out there. What else? What else is it? I'm sorry? Control? Absolutely. What do I get to control? Really? I get to control how I feel about myself and how other people feel about me. I get to not have to think about, I get to feel like I'm an important person, I'm valuable, I contribute, because I'm giving so much to people. I don't have to deal with myself. really. So the conflict's in here. I mean, with all of these, the conflict is within me, not really with the other person.
So surely you must be well informed and therefore the authority.
That's right. Yes. Yes. Yep. Resistant. Resistant is like the angry teenager who's not going to do what you want him to do just because you want him to do it. There's two kinds. There's passive and aggressive. Oftentimes, the person who's resistant is not thinking about what they actually want for themselves. They're thinking about, I'm not going to do what you want me to do. I'm resisting the pain of being irrelevant or invisible or dominated. So it's, or it can be, okay. Dependent. So it's similar, it has a similar feel to complicity, but it's different because I want something different. I don't want, with complicity, I don't want you upset with me. So I'm going to be kind of invisible. With dependence, I'm not going to take, I want you to make the decisions and I don't want to take any responsibility because I don't want to risk. They're overlap, but there's a difference, bit of a difference, okay? So what this group do, resistance and dependence, come up with 5 each, 5 ways in which you've experienced that yourself, you've done that yourself, or you've had other people do it in a relationship with you. The group in the back, why don't you do manager, caretaker? Come up with some different ways in which people do that. This group is doing the complicit withdrawal, is that right? And then the back group is doing intimidation. Okay, why don't you take 5 minutes and do that? Okay. Let's bring it back here and have you see what you guys have came up with. Okay. You guys had intimidation? Okay. Yes? Okay.
We know nothing about
You know nothing about it. You've never made that decision yourself. Plenty of other people have made it with you, but you're surrounded by intimidators. Yes.
Stomping, slamming.
Stomping. Ooh. I have not heard that one before. That's a good one. Slamming.
Throwing things.
So we're getting physical here.
Mm-hmm.
Getting physical.
Assault. Threats of assault, physical threats.
Threats. Assault.
Verbal intimidation.
Verbal, like let's say being loud.
Yes.
Talking
And
fast.
demeaning. Yes.
Okay.
Tone, intimidating tone. I guess it
So like a harsh tone.
Volume.
Volume.
Shouty caps in text or email. Condescending verbiage.
Oh, condescending. Ew. Okay. What are some ways people are condescending? I'm sorry? So it's a lot of body language.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of looking down on somebody, you know, like.
Yeah. Of course you would.
I'm having fun. Any other ways? Any other ones out there? Intimidation? Posture, standing up, posture. Yeah. How about name calling? Yeah. How about
name dropping is one.
Name dropping. How about quoting scripture and
yeah,
using God?
The ultimate name
You guys
drop.
don't do that, do you? Any other ones?
Citing the person's need to depend on you because of something that you did for them in the past.
Say that again now.
Citing the person's need to depend on you because of something that you did for them in the past, and they owe you big time.
So this is like manipulation.
Mhm.
Well, I'm thinking guilting, you know.
Guilt. Yeah. Guilt. Guilt and shame are big ones. Okay. We can really put it on people, can't we? Okay. Good. Okay. What about complicit? Who had complicit?
We did back here.
Okay.
So go along to get along is the kind of
Yeah.
the theme we thought.
Go along.
That it's a response to intimidation.
Yes.
So we started with pacification, but to ingratiate oneself with someone else. Trying to get on their
put
good
yourself
side.
down. Make yourself nothing. Put yourself down.
No, trying to get on someone's good side.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Ingratiate
Okay.
someone.
How do you spell that?
I have no idea. I put INGRATIATE.
That's correct.
Okay, I got it. I mean, just phonetically.
And so an example was in a religious or a political discussion to agree with an outrageous opinion to avoid a conflict that you don't agree with.
Yes.
Agree when you don't agree.
Yes, exactly. To lead people to believe that you're with them rather than not.
Or at least not disagree with them.
Exactly. Yes. Sure.
I get it.
I got it. Yeah. Anything else?
I see. No, that's what we had for complicit.
Okay.
We also had withdrawn.
Withdrawn and indifferent. And we had compartmentalize. So to think about something else while the conflict is happening. So to
that's a good one.
Go somewhere else.
Yes. Leave the building. Elvis has left the building.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Change the subject.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to remember these.
Yeah. Whatever.
Well, you guys have got some good ones.
Using sarcasm, humor, or self-deprecation to kind of
So deflect somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And to leave.
I think sarcasm is more intimidating.
Sarcasm is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are good ones.
The last one we had was like using something like substance abuse or some.
Yeah, well, that was yes,
to escape.
Yes.
Some way to escape.
I'm going to put compulsive addictive.
Sure.
Escape. Just so you know, anything can be used as a way of escaping. Anything. So, not being present. Those are good ones. I think also humor.
And yeah.
Okay. You guys had dependent and resistant, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for resistant, for passive, we had like sly comments.
I'm sorry?
For passive resistance, we had sly comments or jokes. Yeah.
Jokes. Okay.
Or sarcasm.
Sarcasm, yes.
Or just.
Because you're not recording you anymore right now. You can keep going and you can get it on the other one. Okay. So no, it goes. Yeah. Sorry, guys.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And then we also had like body language.
Okay. And this is the passive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then for the aggressive, we had like rebuking.
Sorry?
Rebuking.
Rebuking?
Mm-hmm. And then we had one that we weren't sure if it was more intimidating or resistant, but if someone like repeating other people's flaws, like if they were telling you something and then you bring out all the times they did that to you, kind of like being aggressive. Yeah, kind of being like, oh, you can't, attack me on this because you did this and this and this. Almost. We weren't sure if that was more intimidating or being big.
That's like, sort of
Yeah, like blame shifting. Yeah.
blaming is definitely
Saying that's the part telling
Yeah. Yeah. Like calling them hypocritical or something. And then like loud volume. Having loud volume or stuff like that, the way that you talk.
Let me give you some other ones, okay? Procrastination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, we said not doing it, saying you'll do it, not
Walking slow. Unenthusiastic. Forgetting.
Definitely.
Aggressive. Oh, I get to hold this. Aggressive. How about aggressive? A couple more. How about just being contrary? Like starting fights. Any other ones? Those are good. I hadn't thought about, blaming is definitely one. Volume, rebuking is a good one. It's a great one. Okay. What about dependent?
We were a little confused on, like, on what is versus like conflicted.
So for example, let's say the manager person is going to have all the ideas and all the information, is going to be telling you what to do and how you should do it or how you should think or what's the right thing to want kind of thing. I'm sorry. Give me a second. Okay. Was it the battery?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you all mind staying 10 minutes more after 8:30? Because I want to, there's something I want to. I got it backwards. These people got their eye out for me. They're looking out for me. Okay. Is that good? Can you hear me now? There it is. Okay.
We're good.
Okay. So in a relationship where you have a caretaker, for example, the converse would be a person who is dependent. So if you're, for example, if I'm a caretaker and I'm telling you what to do and what to think and how to feel and what you should want, you have no risk. You want me. So what a dependent person is that you would want to have that kind of relationship with somebody where they tell you what to think and what to feel and what to want, and so you don't have to take any risk.
So that would be like making yourself kind of small.
Very small and visible.
Okay.
Very small. Exactly.
Like making them, like kind of making them pity you. Would that be a way to do it or no?
Certainly feel responsible for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This one wasn't on my list for a long time, but I was, my dad passed, my parents lived in Baker City, and I think my dad's has been gone for 10 years now. And my mom came here, moved here, and I was her caretaker for the last 5 years of her life. And my mom made a decision. It's a little complicated, but for some reasons, my mom had made the decision that she didn't want to make any decisions. and she wanted me to make them for her. And my belief was that I thought when you get older, like you lose stuff. The older you get, the more loss there is. Like you lose your facilities and you can't do everything you used to do and that kind of stuff. And so the more decisions that you can make, the more sense of control or power you have over your life. My mom didn't want that. And I was trying to like, well, what would you like? What do you want? What are your options? That was how I interacted with her about stuff. She said, I just want you to tell me what to do, what the right thing to do, because she didn't want to risk. So that would be an example. Okay.
Would it be like an example would be like having like questioning their love or like, do you love me? Like,
yeah.
When you want to help me out, like help me do this.
Sure.
Like that.
Yeah. Don't you care about me?
Yeah. Like questioning.
Come on, just help me. Yeah. Okay. What about so that's dependent. And who had managing caretaker? You guys in the back?
We had overparenting.
Overparenting? Yes, that's a good one.
Lecturing.
Like control?
Yeah.
Overparenting? Lecturing?
Yeah.
Sure.
Being demanding.
Demanding?
Giving advice a lot.
Advice, that's right. That's a big one. Advice, and part of giving advice is having all the answers.
Mm-hmm. We also had planning.
Explaining?
Planning.
Planning?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry I'm having a hard time hearing a little bit tonight because I have this thing in my good ear and this is my bad ear. So sorry about that. I might switch it up the next time.
What we mean by that, the planning, Larry?
I'm sorry?
What we mean by that and that planning example of that, when I was 16, my mom invited me to lunch and it turns out she took me to McDonald's. And while I was there, she had a application filled out partially for me. I did not want a job. And I had to fill out that application as part of lunch. And then 5 minutes later, I was having an interview. So she had planned this whole thing.
I see.
To get me a job without just actually talking to me about whether I wanted
so
to
in
get
some
job.
ways making decisions for you.
Correct. So planning would be making decisions for you.
Okay. So I want to say two things. You guys have done a great job coming up with all these ways. Came up with some, I've done this a lot, and you came up with some stuff I hadn't thought about. So it was good stuff. There's one thing I want to say about this stuff, and then I'm going to do something else for just 10 minutes. So what's important to understand about these self-protections, and how many of you identified with some of these? Have you done all this stuff? All of them? Is it there's one or two that you're better at? You have more practice with? Yeah. Well, that's generally true, that we usually have one or two that we're really more strong at, but we can shift too because we're flexible. Depending on the person that we're interacting with, we can shift because we don't want to experience discomfort. So what's important about understanding these, Jesus did every single one of these. Jesus was intimidating. He got in the temple and got the whip out and he was certainly complicit at times. He was certainly withdrawn. He was certainly a caretaker. He certainly resisted at times, and he was dependent. He was all of those things at different times. What makes this a problem when there's conflict is what we want from it. It's what we want to happen from it. When Jesus did these things, he wasn't hiding from reality. He wasn't trying to manage his comfort level. When we do these things, we're trying to hide from what we feel, what our emotions are, and trying to manage our emotional comfort level. That's what makes it a problem. So to answer the question, we're going to talk more about this, but remember we had the list up here, and I asked the question, how do we get from what we want, is all that good stuff, and to all that bad stuff? By the choices we make when there's conflict, we choose our own emotional comfort because we don't want to experience pain. That's what we want. That's the problem. We choose comfort because we don't like discomfort. I want to read something to you. This is this book has been around for a long time. It's a book called The Road Less Traveled by a guy named Scott Peck. Presumably he was in the process of becoming a believer as he wrote this, but I'm not sure. But let me read this one page to you. What makes life difficult is the process of confronting and solving problems is a painful one. Problems, depending upon their nature, evoke on us frustration or grief or sadness or loneliness or guilt or regret or anger or fear or anxiety or anguish or despair. These are uncomfortable feelings, often very uncomfortable, often as painful as any kind of physical pain, sometimes equaling the very worst kind of physical pain. Indeed, it is because of the pain that events or conflicts engender in us that we call them problems. And since life poses an endless series of problems, life is always difficult and full of pain as well as joy. Yet it is in this whole process of meeting and solving problems that life has its meaning. Problems are the cutting edge that distinguishes between success and failure. Problems call forth our courage and our wisdom. Indeed, they create our courage and our wisdom. It is only because of problems that we grow mentally and spiritually. When we desire to encourage the growth for the human spirit, we challenge and encourage the human capacity to solve problems. Just as in school, we deliberately set problems for our children to solve. It is through the pain of confronting and resolving problems that we learn. As Benjamin Franklin said, those things that hurt instruct. It is for this reason that wise people learn not to dread, but actually welcome problems and to actually welcome the pain of problems. Most of us are not so wise. Fearing the pain involved, almost all of us, to a greater or lesser degree, attempt to avoid problems. We procrastinate, hoping that they go away. We ignore them, forget them, pretend they do not exist. We even take drugs to assist us in ignoring them, so that by deadening ourselves to the pain, we can forget the problems that cause the pain. Okay. So that's what Peck says. So what I want to do, real quickly, I want to get your input on, let's say, here's Larry. So I want input from you. Let's try to graphically draw intimidation or being big. Any ideas? A picture.
I
Yeah.
would say almost the idea of it growing, it's
Okay.
and
So,
almost growing over a person,
so
going into maybe leaning.
So let's say Christine is here. Christine is my wife, by the way. So I'm kind of taking up space between me and her, some kind of space.
Even overhanging her.
Yes, leaning into over.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
lean over.
maybe Christine's down here now, and I'm like that. Is that a good description of big? That makes sense? Okay, so let's say I make the decision to get big. What just happened?
You're not at the same level.
I'm not on the same level.
Mm-hmm.
I'm up here. What else happened? So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that this is good. What just happened? I'm sorry? I have walls around me, don't I? I did that. And if I have walls up, what's also true? I'm impenetrable and you're not getting to me. So I just isolated myself from my wife. I did that all by myself. And see, this is the main point that I want to have you get here and understand. We're going to talk about this a lot next week, but one of the bigger problems with why we don't learn from conflict is because we're often making the other person the problem. I'm responding by being intimidating. I am responding to some fear inside of me. And the way that I respond to that fear or manage that fear is I got big. All by myself. I isolated myself. I put walls around me. I made myself unapproachable, impenetrable. You can't get to me. You can't hurt me. All these different ways that we talked about are ways in which people can be big. I just sabotaged that list, that good list, all that good stuff. My choice to get big, whether it's conscious or implicit, I sabotaged the thing I want and created some stuff on that bad list. It was me, my decision. Does that make sense? It wasn't somebody else who did it or made the decision. It was me. Okay. So let's look at the next one. Next one is complicit. So let's say Larry's complicit. What is complicit? What would complicit look like? And the reason I'm doing this is so you can kind of see it, not just hear the words, but you can visually see it. And I think it's helpful. Less visible, exactly. So let's say, how's that? How's that? So guess what happened if I make myself less visible? You can't find me. You can't love me.
You just agreed with you.
No, I just hurt myself.
Well, yeah, you just hurt yourself.
Yeah.
But
and guess what happens? I hurt myself and then I get pissed off at you because you're not giving me what I want. I resent you. So inside, there's a bunch of anger. There's a bunch of bitterness and resentment because I'm working really hard to have you notice me and love me, but I'm making myself invisible. And so I'm really upset with you. And every once in a while, it gets the best of me and I kind of have an explosion. And then I feel really guilty and go double down. That's the cycle. Okay. But guess what? I did it myself. I took my voice away. If I want to be important to you and have you love me, taking my voice away is not the way it's going to work. I sabotaged that thing. Remember that list? I went from the good stuff to the bad stuff. Okay. Let's try to finish this real quick. So withdrawn. So I think you're getting the idea here. So let's say Larry leaves and he's not here anymore. He's over here. Guess what happens? Guess what just happened if I withdrew? I isolated myself. I'm alone. I did it all by myself. You didn't do it. And I created the very thing that I'm trying to avoid. So what I'm trying to help you see and understand and learn is that how we get from the good stuff to the bad stuff is by the decisions we make to try to avoid pain. We bring the very pain we're trying to avoid. The reason that we use these self-protections or strategies is because we believe on some level, whether it's conscious or implicit, that they will work. Human beings do things for a reason. They don't do it because they don't think it's not going to get them the result they want. They do it because they think it's going to work. That's how we work. But when we use these behaviors to try to manage my comfort level, they don't work. In fact, we believe they work, they don't work, and they bring the very pain I'm trying to avoid. And we keep doing them over and over again. So guess what happens when let's say I withdraw and I create, on a scale of pain, on a scale of 1 to 10, I've got a 3. So then I choose to withdraw, and my pain goes to a scale of 1 to 4. It's a 4. And I just keep doing the same thing over and over again, creating more pain for myself and being more alone by the choices I've made. Our choices are really, really important. I'm going to say one more thing, then I'll take your question. Most of us believe the way we live life is we think that it's other people's choices that actually impact us the most. That is not true. That's not to say that people's choices don't impact us. That's not to say that people don't hurt us. That's very true, and it's huge. It has a huge impact on us. But the choices that I make about how I'm going to respond to that stuff has way more impact on me, on my life over the years, significantly more. My choices matter. Okay? So you want to see the rest of it real quick? Okay. So withdraw, manage. So what do you think managing looks like? Let's say, what's that? Get off of me? I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just.
I'm sorry.
About, like with the withdrawn, there's an early payoff. I mean,
Sure.
It's not like you go straight to.
Very temporarily.
This is.
Yes.
I'm going to have a bad result from this. First, you kind of get a little win that.
Sure. Sure.
You put the other person in a little pain.
Yes. Maybe.
Maybe.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. But.
And then on the other side of that is more pain for you.
Because I'm alone. Because what I want is relationship. I want to know that I'm cared about. I want to be safe. And that's the big deal with withdrawing, is safety. Okay. Thanks. So let's do the caretaking thing. What would that look like? I thought
maybe L is standing on C or sitting on C.
ooh.
Isn't it a little bit like L is actually putting C in the box and carrying the box around?
Putting C in a box?
Yeah.
You think that's better?
It's more like you wrap them up in a great big fuzzy blanket and you're fine. You don't have to worry about anything. I'll just carry you around.
You know, I think this is better than the way I used to draw it, like this, and I would draw it like that, kind of like that. So it's kind of taking over, but I like this being on top of better. It's better graphically. It demonstrates it better because I'm the boss, right? I'm right. So you can see. Guess what this person's doing? Say that again. Trying to. How do you think they actually feel about me deep down inside?
They feel isolated from, like, you aren't actually interacting with them. You're isolating them from you, in a sense.
That's true. That is true. But there's also resentment here. That's exactly right. I'm managing them for my benefit. And maybe they can't articulate it, but it's going on. Yes. Okay, okay, resistance. Let's do resistance real quick. And then we'll end. Okay. How would you draw resistance? You got to, I'm open. What you think? Whether it's real hard or kind of passive. That was the president of the college or the board. So, so you can see the reason I draw this stuff so is that you can see it. But what I'm trying to help you understand and learn is that our choices matter. And when we make choices to avoid the discomfort of conflict, we are creating the very pain that we're trying to avoid. We've moved over from the good stuff to the bad stuff by our choices. That's what I'm trying to help you see. Okay. I'm sorry I kept you more longer. Yeah, I'm going to hang out if you want to answer some questions if you want. I'm going to do a really brief review next week, and then we're going to move on to another piece next week. And then the final week, we're going to talk about repair, because a lot of people don't know what to do with all this stuff or what to do when there's a conflict. We don't want to sweep it under the carpet or pretend it didn't happen. So I'm going to help you learn how to do repair. Okay? Thank you very much. You're great.